It's late on a Wednesday. Jim hasn't been to bed. He has to keep talking about the Walking Dead.
Yes, indeed. There we go. We're fired up. And that's the thing. Once you have a theme song for a show, then that's a concrete deal. And
it
you
is
have done
official.
that. So I thank you, Mark, for doing that. And we're ready to rock here with issue 2 of The Walking Dead. Obviously, we're doing the deluxe version, the colorized version. But this originally came out, this issue, on November 12th, 2003. And the estimated sales for this issue when it came out was 6,067. That is down from the first issue. Number ones always do better, but the number one was only in the 7s. So it's crazy
I don't know how this book survives, right?
I know, really.
Aside from it's in black and white.
Yes. And so you are kind of fighting some things here. And obviously by a little bit, it's going to skyrocket, but it's funny that it wasn't right off the bat. And then the TV show and everything else would help out. But it's created and written by Robert Kirkman, pencils by Tony Moore, Dave McKeag doing the deluxe colors that we have enjoyed. And we ended up the last issue where you end up having Rick kind of trying to figure out what happened after he got out of this coma, trying to figure out the deal, running into some survivors, and then going off in a police car, one of his police cars that he said runs better than the other. This was the big deal, so that he could get to Atlanta to hopefully find his wife and son. Well, we start off right away. He's run out of gas. I mean, this is going to be a thing,
a bad
right?
Week.
Yeah, he is. So he ran out of gas, and he's stopping at no gas stations seem to have gas to give. So he's really screwed. And where I'll tell you, this deal of this, the whole story so far, we end up getting further ahead in the second issue than I really thought we would. I thought that, and maybe some people might have been afraid of as well. When you first read it, I'm getting like one of those, like The Road, or one of those, things, The Postman, like this post-apocalypse. And it's going to be basically the story will be the journey to get to Atlanta. And then probably, in my mind, finding out that his wife and kid had died years ago. Like, this would take 5 years. It takes 2 issues. I mean, he gets to Atlanta here. And I did not notice, but I will do. They have it previously. Rick Grimes woke up from a coma in a new world where the dead roamed the streets and preyed on the living. After the help of Morgan and his son Dwayne, Rick is out on the road looking for his family, but it's a long way to Atlanta, and nothing has prepared him for the danger we'll face. And again, this is one of those where you said before we started, I said, boy, these things, they're really quick. You get through these, and you said the pacing is really good.
It is really
I agree.
good.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
He's had some books at this point that weren't that successful. So you can tell with this book, he's just, okay, I really have to work to make this thing pay off, right? Because I can't sit here just letting people have a slow burn. I need to get this thing going.
I think is the point. If he spends 12 issues to get to Atlanta, what else are we going to find before he gets to Atlanta? Right? You know what I mean? What else are we going to do? Because he's already seen the zombies. He's running away. He even at this point where his car runs out of gas and he starts walking, gathers up his things, and then sees a farmhouse and goes in. There's a dead family all around. And even with that, you end up seeing that the family, it's a horrific scene. And this is one of those where
stuff.
Usually in this time and age of our deal, you'd have him come in and say, oh my God, the father killed his family and then shot himself in the head. But he doesn't. He almost vomits like we would. But even that, you get just this scene there where you end up seeing that there appears to be the father, right? He has murder-suicide. He has decided that if they're going to be zombies, he's going to kill himself and his family. His family, who are all holding Bibles. You end up also seeing the cross on the thing. So they're religious people. This is not going to go well for them as things were happening. No. But also, you also see that little bit where he seemingly shot somebody or somebody else did the same thing, maybe on the other couch where you do see the blood on the wall. Right. And it's so odd just to kind of like, oh my God, it's such a horrific scene. But look at what it is. The family has their Bibles, what appears to be a little girl with a Bible and her teddy bear. I mean, to go with the idea of all the bad things that Rick is going to see and go through, you're really reminded that, the people who didn't make it had some hard times as well. I mean, this is awful.
I identify with these folks because, hey, when the zombie apocalypse happens, I'm not sure if I'm going to want to have to work my way through it. It sounds pretty awful.
And again, just to point out the other thing of this is these, in my mind, I think 100%, they're religious people. They didn't turn into zombies. Zombies wouldn't sit there and shoot their head off on a. These are people who didn't want to turn into zombies and go to hell, whatever they may think with their religion, and decided if this is what's happening and all the world is going to hell like this, let's end it now. There's nothing worth living. And they give it up it's horrific. It really is 100% horrific scene. And there's Rick, who's looking for his family. He sees it, almost up Chuck's run. Well, he does up Chuck, actually. He runs out, he runs out and throws up, and then pretty much goes and sees a barn and goes in. Now, this is kind of a convenient thing where he goes in and there is a horse and that's where I think that the point out, when I first read this, I thought that this family had turned into zombies, and then realized, wait a second, zombies don't do that, because then when he goes into the horse, he's like, oh, they leave you alone in here. We see later, because then I thought there was this little thing. Ooh, the zombies don't go after animals. But then they do. When we get to it later, they do big time. So that's where I'm like, they weren't zombies.
It's kind of odd here because you see the poor people laying on the floor. I mean, it looks to me like it's been like a month from the decomposing. But you look at this horse and he's nice and fresh. So it's kind of odd to me that he shows up. Horse seems perfectly
and the horse
nourished.
Yes. Yeah, that's the problem. I would have liked to have seen, I'm looking now, because a lot of times he does make sure that things are, accounted for. I would have almost thought that it'd be a funny thing. You do see some hay in that one side, but again, this is a horse that is left on its own. If you would leave, say, a month worth of grain there for it, say the family's like, we're going to do this, let's make sure the horse, I kind of think they would have killed the horse as well, maybe. But you end up with that whole deal where, there's the horse. And just on this side, again, this whole thing with the family is disturbing me. You also have to go with the idea that the world is so bad right now. And he is really pointing out that these people are very religious. You're not allowed to commit suicide, like that. And that is that's how bad this is. It almost gives you that extra layer of a highly religious family will just do that so that they don't have to suffer like that. It's awful. But
it's amazing how much
the horse being there. Yeah, the horse being there and being okay is a little forced. Now, there is a quick thing that actually is spelled out later where you end up having Rick with the axe, where he goes off with the axe. You see him grab that deal and go off. That comes out big. For some reason, that was a thing that they fought with about how much they should show him grab. It was weird. I read this thing and they're like, at first that was just they saw it and then you didn't see it, but now it's fully deal because he's going to need that as well as we go. Even though it seemed like a weird, but he's going off on the horse and he's talking to the horse, has nobody to talk to. And then tells the story about when, his son Carl was born, C-section, all these things going on. And it's a nice little deal. It's nothing that, it's like, this is what Robert Kirkman does to get you into these characters. He ends up going with a story or something that doesn't necessarily need to be here for what's going on, but it opens up things and why and what he's thinking of and things like that. Does a lot of firepower as well.
It doesn't take you out of the story, right? It sounds like a real person and their real experience and how they would really talk about this.
It is.
Not over dramatic or anything, but this is what you do when you're on a, going through the desert on a horse with no name. So that's what when you're sitting there listening to America and, and you're hoping that Ventura Highway comes on, but a horse with no name does, which was one of my dad's favorite songs. And by the time I had heard it so much, it drives me nuts. And also, I also preferred the Tin Man. I like that because then it had a little, Wizard of Oz reference. But you have all this going on, yes. And he does get to Atlanta. We're halfway through the second issue. It's
and
just
the big thing
through.
I thought that this was going to. And again, we said you can't waste too much time doing that because what new things are you got? What is he going to find a house where he has to kill a bunch of people? Then he goes and finds that killer. No, you end up where the big thing, and it centers on it, especially after he gets the horse, is my family, my family. That is stress over and over, and that's his deal.
That's how he doesn't end up like those folks that blew their brains out, right?
He has some hope.
He's right? got a purpose. He's got hope.
My God.
I mean, if you got that, you're going to make it through. So
yeah, well, he makes it through into Atlanta.
Now, this is a great shot,
there.
right? I mean, because I've driven into Atlanta, and that's what it looks like, except you don't have as much trash or broken down cars sitting on the side of the road.
And zombies waiting for you, right?
And I found it interesting that the artist put Homer Simpson on a billboard.
I know.
What?
I just looked to see if that was the deal of it being mentioned exactly what it was, but it was off. Like you just see Homer. But is that when the movie came out? I don't remember if the movie came out around 2003. I thought it was a little later than that.
It was later than that.
Yeah, I thought too. But again, you're kind of given a time frame deal. And it's funny because you don't really need that stuff since Rick, he was only in a coma for a little bit. It wasn't like he was in a coma for 5 years. But I think that was just a little shout out. But yeah, you go in and just the art there as he goes in. And again, this is another thing where I love the colors. They're not like day glow stuff. It ends up being muted, but seeing the skyline, all that is so cool looking to kind of give you the idea. Like here we go into Atlanta. The roads are horrible. The cars are just done. You have an upward thing, but you still have the buildings, and you still have it's not like a nuclear blast where everything was leveled.
No,
the zombies.
It just looks like New Orleans during Mardi Gras.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Or Quakertown every day. And so, you have that. And so that stresses again, the zombies aren't around to destroy Earth. They're there to eat. They really are mindless, and they're going to eat and things like that. They're not going to start ripping buildings down and stuff like that. No. And if they're stuck in buildings, they're stuck in buildings, as we end up finding out as we go, because he ends up in downtown, or at least getting close to downtown Atlanta. He gets in a little, and he's surrounded by zombies. I mean, there are tons. And the thing is, this ends up going a little bit of what you said that we were worried about, or you have in a lot of these movies and things like that. Like, how did he get that close in to be surrounded where, oh my God. I mean, he goes, shit. And I'm like, really? Like, there are a lot of people there, and a lot of them are around you. And then they pretty much
his head is on a swivel, right? And he's at the perfect vantage point. He's up in the air.
He's up in a horse. And so what happens is he's lucky he's on a horse, because that's what they go for. And like I said, I thought that he had thought earlier, like, oh man, they left you alone. I thought that he meant zombies, not the family that killed themselves. And so when he got on, we get here, they go to town. The zombie, and it's horrific. And I think it's more horrific in color as well, because you see the blood and the guts and the different colors of the different intestines as these zombies are just eating, and then happen to notice Rick and then go after him. He does have that axe, that tomahawk deal. He ends up hitting this one guy in the head, grabs that, starts shooting. I mean, he's freaking out, which I would as well.
Yes.
And then he runs into our man Glenn, who really does, and I hate to say it, he looks like Short Round right away with that Yankees cap. It really does, and it's the cap, right? This is Short Round older, even though he'd be way older from that. But that cap deal, I'm like, it's Short Round. But he says pretty much, come with me if you want to live. I mean, you get that a lot.
It's starting to look like Indy, right? It's like him and Indy between the hat, the jacket, and all of that. Yeah,
everything going on. I think that's kind of the wink with that, because there's no reason you would go with that cap beside. And the opposite deal of, now Short Round's going to save Indy, and they go off, and Glenn is all about saving, Rick, and you kind of don't, why would he be that involved, whatever, but they've been through some shit. You find a person who's actually alive, you're going to try to help him out, and you don't just leave him behind. And at this point, I like the idea that Rick is freaking out, but Glenn has been around this stuff for a bit now. He is a veteran, and he knows that they can get away from these zombies. It's not even that hard. It's just you have to know how to do it. First off, don't shoot your gun, asshole, because everybody's now going to hear that sound and come to that. And so, and I like that setup of showing you the zombies will go towards a sound like that, that will come into play, things like that. But he ends up, they go up to the top of this building. They have to jump over, a Batman deal to the next building, jump over an alley where Rick's like, I can't do that. And he's like, you're going to have to. And I do like the interaction, too, because he does do that with all of his equipment. And then when he barely makes it over, you end up having Glenn, you should have thrown the duffel bag first.
Now you tell me.
Why didn't you tell me that? But, it's just a funny little deal as they're going. And I do like we talked about the pacing of this. I like the idea that while they are going through, they're running down an alley, then they go through a fence, almost like they're sneaking into a baseball game a la, 1931. They go through there. They almost step on a zombie who's just sitting there. You end up having Glenn say, you always have to watch out wherever you're going, wherever you're looking all over. And also don't get bit. One little bite, you're done. So you set up rules. But I like the way the pacing and the writing is, which I think is incredible, because this isn't okay, let's stop right away and talk about what's going on. You have this like a little bit of info as they're running. They go through the fence, they're getting tired. Finally, they get out in the woods. They're going away from Atlanta and they do stop. And that's when Glenn can give like, well, why don't you know about this stuff? Like, what's going on? Yeah. And then he's like, I was in a coma. And that's where they say, he goes, seriously? He's like, yeah, I woke up yesterday. I don't know what's going on. And this is where Rick finds out the big to-do here. He was told, by Dwayne and Morgan, get to Atlanta. That's where everybody was from, but they hadn't been there. So they don't know things went bad. They're just holing out, back, all that stuff. Shit went wrong. And when you went to the cities, it was just pretty much you're setting up a base of food where all the zombies came. So most people that went to the cities ended up dying. And that's where Rick gets upset. He thinks that his wife and kid may have died. And I like the idea where what you're getting, the go-getters that actually got their ass to Atlanta first, they're dead. Like, this is what I get. You get the stragglers. He even says the latecomers were the ones that were able to survive. We were able to get through it because we already saw, when we got here, we saw the city's terrible, but they've set up camp because of the concept of when the government does come and decide to get things done, they'll go to the cities, we'll be outside and they'll find us and we'll be safe. So they have this camp that's, a couple cars, a bus, an RV, all these things around where they sit there.
You can tell that they still have hope that like, okay, this is going to get sorted out. The government's going to figure it all out. Don't worry about it. And I'm thinking, you do realize that they told everybody to herd into the cities and they all got slaughtered. So,
and you haven't heard from them since. Now, the only thing that makes me a little more hopeful, if it was that and I was there, is the idea like it hasn't been that long, right? Like when Rick woke up, if this would have been 3 years, people would have been bailing. They'd be like, screw this, let's go. But everybody's still kind of hanging with the idea that we're going to be safe. We're going to be safe. Okay, they're going to come and get us. They'll get us eventually. We just have to live. And they're kind of using that, like you said, as their hope. And again, with all of this going on, the idea that I thought it would take a while to get to Atlanta the first time I did read through it and all that. And then the idea, okay, where you end up having Glenn say, listen, and he feels bad because Rick starts crying. He's like, my wife and kid, I'm sure they went to Atlanta where their parents were, where my in-laws were. And he's, oh man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told you that way if I knew that. But hey, I've seen some people survive through things. And, there's always hope. There's always the chance they didn't, whatever. And then I'm thinking, okay, now we're going to spend 20 issues for him to get the clues to go. And we go to the next page where they're like, hey, here's the camp. Glenn's like, oh, the camp right over here. He's like, camp? Like what? Yeah. Okay, well, boom, boom, boom. Oh, my God, there's my wife and kid. And they come flying up. And it surprised me the way that he's playing this so quickly. But that's kind of why I'm into it in the two issues, and why when I originally did, I was through the two trades very quickly. And he sees Lori, his wife, and Carl. And yeah, it's crazy. Now, you get a little snafus with all of this and what happens when you think your husband is dead from an apocalypse and stuff like that. We will get into all that nonsense. But at this point, you pretty much have a story that could have ended right now. Like the idea, like, okay, well, that's it. I found my family. But obviously, they have to survive. I think that Rick's like, hey, I got this teddy bear for you, Carl, and you hold this Bible. I saw this earlier. I think we're going to end it now. That would be crazy. But you end up with all this going on. And yeah, you even see where Carl's hanging out. There's a couple little kids stuff. There's all these people where everybody's all excited. They have this little community going. And it's pretty cool. And you get some feels right away in the second issue, which is crazy.
Exactly. And it's not even like they feel like they have to leave you on a cliffhanger. That's one of the things I like is this series doesn't like have a formula for, okay, we need to get people to buy the next issue. Yeah, just rely on what you've done with the characters and the story to this point, and people will, come in. And not only that, what's awesome is when you go from book to book, it's not like one book ends and the next book opens up with a whole different scene to like plunge you into it. You feel, again, he's totally keeping you like Rick, where you're just kind of in the story. You don't know what's coming next. It's just this monotonous little drive to wherever your destination is. And it's just
and
really
that's
cool.
Crazy. And you're right, because you end with a cliffhanger that is just Rick who's hugging his family. I mean, this isn't like any other time. He'd be hugging his family and we'd look and there'd be a zombie coming from behind the RV because of the distraction that Rick has caused. Now 5 people could die. You don't get that. You don't have that. And what's even better is you could have gone that way, because who says that Rick won't die? Who says that Carl won't die? These are characters we don't know. They could. You could end up having the switcheroo. So instead of having Batman, oh my God, Batman's going to die. I got to like nobody believes that. In this, you can't not believe anything that you would see because they're new characters and everything going on. We still, me and you, reading this, if this was our first time through, we don't even know really what's going on in the world except for these little things that they are, doing here. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Even really we have hope, thinking they're going to come up with a cure for this whole thing, or who knows what could be happening here, which
it's so crazy. And I really do like it. I really do. And if you get this issue, what's kind of a cool deal as well is, I don't know if you looked at it, but they made the original proposal. You see the original proposal that they did.
That's like a DVD extra.
It is, and it's really, really cool. It really is, where you see the zombie deal and everything going on, how it's set up. And I like it's the Kirkman Moore TV that you have an announcement on. It's really cool, and it's really neat to have these things. So they're not just saying, hey, we're going to throw this out there as a colored deal. They are giving you some more things and some little essays as well and stuff like that.
Well,
it
really
it's a really cool deal.
It makes you appreciate the story even more because like when you watch like DVD extras of like scenes they cut out, or the best one I saw was for, what was it? The Terrifics? No. And The Incredibles. That's what it was.
Okay.
The DVD extra, they actually showed the sketch drawings they did for the original script, and it is nothing like the actual movie you get. Instead, they're already living in suburbia. They're at a backyard barbecue and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, how boring and formulaic. And this thing at the back of this issue totally reminded me of that, where you're thinking, I don't think I would have kept going. This is pretty much paint by numbers right now.
Yeah. And what I really do like also, you get the cutting room floor. They always have this like outline, Robert Kirkman's outline for the issue. And I really like this because it's just basically, here's what will happen in page 1. Here's, this really rough deal. And the one it does, goes in house, people dead in bottom panel, suicide. And then at the end, you even have 19 on roof, 20 escape out of city, 21 walk in woods back to camp, number 22 wife and kids woo.
It's so great seeing how they did it.
It's so cool. You even have zombies stirring, zombies attack, tries to get away, overwhelmed, thrown off horse, all that. It's so cool to see the little bits and things going on with it, and see how easy. And like we're talking about the pacing and things like that, you could read this. And I'm telling you, it's just like number 1, driving for panels. Number 2, car broke down, splash. Number 3, starts walking, sees house with barn. And you see that he goes from that and then keeps that pacing up, very quick and things like that.
Yeah.
Not a lot of extraneous stuff. Just, he says, even that, talks with horse. More talking with horse, right? It says sleeping with horse in abandoned car. We even get that taken out back to riding. Yeah, so he even thought, well, the sleeping and all this, let's get rid of that. Let's arrive in town, splash to the city. I really like it. I really do like this. I know that people seem to be down on Robert Kirkman a bit. I saw people say that when I said that we were going to do this, and I don't think that there's a reason, like, because he said some things about superhero comics and things like that. I mean, there's sometimes to be down on people because they've done some really awful things. A guy who says, I'm not really into superhero comics anymore, that doesn't upset me much. And when I read this, it's so good. I haven't seen the TV show, so I think that I am appreciating even the comic even more, not even knowing what happens way down the line and just going with the pacing that you can see it is very cinematic even before it was going to become a TV show. So I love it. I think it's really good. Yeah,
I like the fact that it's in a comic book, because then you're not worried about a like a TV budget and those kinds of things, and writer's strike and all that. Censoring. Oh my gosh. And the best part is Kirkman, wrote this whole series. I mean, that is so great when somebody has a vision, or I should say an idea, and then they can continue just writing it. It's almost like a manga or something, and it's so great. It's not like then you bring somebody in who doesn't give a crap about the characters. And, I'm going in a different direction. It's like,
yeah. And that always, I'll tell you, when you ended up having the Injustice story and then Brian Buccellato came on, I was like, well, I'm going to keep it. It just wasn't as good because the original guy, he knows the characters, things change and all of that. And I'm looking at issue number 193. We ended up getting to, and I just saw a big spoiler. I shouldn't have looked at that. But just as an aside, that issue originally in the first sold over 100,000. So that's where we ended up from that, meager 6 to 7. That is, standard deal for an Image comic back then. You're going nothing special, nothing awful, but you end up over 100,000. And when you would have, and when I would do the sales podcast where I would go and cut and paste the top 10, there was always, when you came out, usually The Walking Dead was on the top 10 when the months that it came out. So that was a big deal. So yeah, it's a cool deal. And
it's nice.
The TV show ended up helping it out, obviously, but this is a really good story. So I hope that people...
He didn't have any crutches. He didn't really have any crutches that he leaned on for this kind of thing. He wasn't trying to go for this is the first appearance of so-and-so. This is the one where so-and-so dies. No, let's just tell a great story. That's
tell
all
the
I
story.
Want.
Yeah, and, things get bought because they're good. They don't always have to be collectible, like you said. Like Naomi from...
That's what I'm thinking of.
That's what I always think of.
I like that book, but...
I liked it enough. I just need it more. The thing about that is, and why I always think of that, though, is because me and Simon legitimately had a bet of how those sales would end. And it was getting towards where I said, and then all of a sudden it vaulted 20,000 more because of collectability. And I'm like, you son of a gun. I was going to win that bet and say that. And again, maybe Simon and his evil genius even thought that might happen by the end, because it did. He was right. It did end up selling better than I said. So there. But that's that. If I was going to rate this, it's funny, too, because I'm just going to go 9.95 again. I don't even know if we have to rate them since we're just going through these. But it's really good. But yeah, I'd probably give it a 9, only because of the idea that horse is just sitting there by itself, and seeing that family had decayed enough that there was some time that was going on with that. That was the only thing. But how about you?
Yeah, I'd give it a 9. I could go 8.5. I could go 9.5.
I was going to go 9.5 at first, but I'll go 9.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard now when you have all this historical perspective and you have the rest of the playing field to look at of other books. And, I'd rather read this than a lot of those books.
I would too. Thanks, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks, Mark, for coming here and doing it with me, even though I still yap and yip. I had a bad day, and I haven't slept very well the past couple of days. So your theme song hit hard for me personally, and I thought, man, I do have to go to bed. I thought that was your cry out for me to go to bed. I'm going to take it as that, so now I can go take a nap or something, but I probably won't.
Yeah, well, it's appropriate that you're dead on your feet.
Yeah, really. And I'm sitting down, but yes, I am almost like when I get up, I will be walking dead on my feet as I go up and try to make dinner for my family, like nonsense. I'm going to have that picture of that family, that religious family. I'm going to keep showing it to them. I'm like, you're driving me to this, guys. It's awful, but I might use that. But we will talk to you later.
It's late on a Wednesday. Jim hasn't been to bed.